She was blessed with fire and became a pilgrim of pain. Can pain ignite a fire within the soul, driving one to greatness? She was not born with it. At least, that was what her mother insisted until her dying breath. The night she came into the world, the midwife claimed the hearth spat sparks across the room, though the fire had been low, almost extinguished. They said her infant cries made the embers flare and hiss, and that no one in that cottage slept soundly after. From the beginning, people whispered. Some whispered in awe, others in dread. She was not like other children, and the village seemed to hold its breath whenever she passed. When she was small, she discovered that her skin did not blister as others did. She could put her hand into the flame of a candle and leave it there until the wax ran down to nothing. She could pick coals from the stove and hold them like fruit. But what disturbed her most was not her endurance, but her hunger. The heat called to her. When she was cold, she did not run to blankets. She ran to the fire. When she was sad, it soothed her. And when she was angry, the air itself seemed to grow hotter, making people step back without knowing why. Her father, a man of stern faith, told her she was cursed. Her mother, who loved her desperately, whispered instead that perhaps she was chosen. They both were wrong. She was not cursed nor chosen. She was made. For in her family line, long buried in ash and rumor, there had been those who carried fire in their blood. Long ago, they had been called saints and martyrs. But time twisted memory, and what was once holy was now feared. The first true test came when she was 14. A fever swept the village, leaving bodies pale and still in their beds. Her brother was the first in her household to falter, skin damp with sweat and breath rattling like old wood. She sat beside him, helpless, until instinct overtook reason. She pressed her palms against his chest, desperate to give him her strength. At first, it was only warmth. Then it was flame. His breath came back with a scream, his body arching as heat surged through him. The sickness fled, but so did his voice. From that day onward, he could not speak. Her mother wept with gratitude, calling it a miracle. Her father looked at her with terror. Word spread quickly, as it always did. The villagers came to her door, carrying their sick and broken. She cured some, burned others beyond saving. They knelt before her, kissed her hands, whispered prayers she did not recognize. Fire was no longer her secret. It was her burden. She became something between priest and executioner, saint and heretic. And yet the more they begged for her touch, the more she felt herself hollowing out. It was the old woman by the river who told her what she truly was. The crone had lived longer than anyone remembered, her face wrinkled like burned parchment. She took the girl's hand one evening and stared into her palm as if it were a scripture. "You were blessed," she croaked, "but not by the God they kneel to. You were blessed by fire itself, and fire does not bless without price." The old woman explained that flame was not merely a tool or an element, but a spirit that demanded worship. Once it chose a vessel, that vessel became both servant and weapon. "If you remain here," she warned, "they will use you until you are nothing but ash. You must walk. You must become a pilgrim. Fire has paths across this world, and you must follow them." So she left her village with only a cloak and the smolder in her chest. They called after her, some pleading, some cursing, but she did not turn back. She walked into the wide world, where every temple, every pyre, every candle seemed to bend toward her presence. At night she dreamed of burning cities, of screaming faces illuminated by her hands. She dreamed of herself kneeling before a vast furnace that whispered in tongues she did not know, yet understood completely. She wandered for years, and everywhere she went, she was both healer and destroyer. In one town, she cleansed plague with a touch. In another, she set barns alight in a single fit of grief. Pilgrims began to follow her. Their feet blistering on the roads she left warm behind her. They called her the Pilgrim of Pain, for though her fire healed, also scarred. She left beauty and ruin in equal measure. Some kingdoms tried to claim her. They locked her in gilded chambers, demanded she light their altars, burn their enemies, sanctify their kings. But fire does not stay caged. More than once she set entire palaces aflame in her escape, leaving nothing behind but blackened stone and the sound of weeping. She did not gloat. She did not laugh. She only walked, always walked, her face serene while the world crackled behind her. There came a day when she no longer felt warm from her gift. Her body was alight, but her heart was cold. She realized that that fire was consuming her soul bit by bit. The pilgrims who still followed her believed she was transcending, becoming divine. But she knew the truth. She was being hollowed, prepared like kindling. Soon there would be nothing left of the girl, only the flame walking in her skin. One night, as she sat alone on a hill, she pressed a coal into her chest until it sank beneath her flesh. There was no pain, only a vast stillness, as if the world were waiting. And then she heard it, the voice she had dreamed of, rising from within the ember that now beat where her heart once was. "Walk," it whispered, "and burn, and walk again." She obeyed. She would always obey. The Pilgrim of Pain, blessed with fire, cursed with endless devotion, continued across the earth. Some hailed her as salvation. Others fled from the shadow of her cloak. But wherever she went, the world knew her, not by her name, which was long forgotten, but by the trail of scorched earth that marked her passing, and the quiet, steady smile of a woman who carried fire not as a gift, but as a god. The first true winter of her pilgrimage nearly killed her. Snow fell heavy as she crossed the northern plains, burying roads and swallowing villages whole. She wandered between drifts, her cloak stiff with frost, her hands red though they never froze. Behind her trudged a line of weary followers, those who had seen her works in towns long burned down, who believed her body contained a holy spark, who whispered that if they died beside her, the fire would remember them and lift their souls out of the earth. The nights were the hardest. The wind screamed to the black trees, and beasts prowled just beyond sight. Her pilgrims begged her for fire, for warmth, for proof that the God they thought lived inside her had not abandoned them. And so she gave it, pressing her palms together until a flame bloomed between them like a flower. They crowded around it, shivering, murmuring prayers. But each time she did, she felt her chest grow emptier. The coal inside her heart pulsed and devoured her strength. And when she dreamed, she no longer saw cities. She saw her own body lying upon a pyre, her skin stretched tight, her mouth open in silent laughter. One evening, a boy came to her fire. His hair was white with snow, his lips cracked with cold. He carried his sister in his arms, small, pale, almost lifeless. He laid her down at the pilgrim's feet and begged, "Please, please, just a touch, just enough to wake her." The Pilgrim of Pain looked at the child. Her body trembled with hunger. The coal inside her whispered, "Give her flame, and she will live, but she will burn with you forever." She touched the girl's brow. A faint glow spread through her, the color of embers hidden beneath ash. She gasped awake, her small chest rising with new breath. The boy wept with joy, pressing his forehead to the ground. But the pilgrim saw the truth. In the girl's eyes flickered a reflection of her own. Fire where innocence should be. She had passed it on. The flame was not content with one vessel. It would spread like it always did. The next morning, she woke to screams. The little girl had wandered too close to the tents. She did not mean to harm anyone. But the frost on her hands had melted into sparks, and sparks had become fire, and fire had become a blaze. By the time the pilgrim reached her, half the camp was gone, reduced to smoldering ash. Survivors looked not at the child, but at her, always at her. "Why?" A woman cried, holding the blackened remains of her husband. "Why would you bring this upon us?" The pilgrim did not answer. She only watched the girl, who stared at her small hands as though they had betrayed her. She knew then that fire was not a blessing. It was a contagion. She left before dawn, leaving her followers to weep and bury their dead. The boy and his sister followed, though she did not ask them to. She tried to tell them to go back, to find some quiet place where they could live without her shadow. But the boy shook his head. "You're not cursed," he told her. "You're a road, and we have to walk it with you." The years stretched long. She moved from kingdom to kingdom, her name reshaped with every tongue. The scorched saint, the flame mother, the walking pyre. Some painted her image in chapels. Others carved warnings into stone, telling travelers to flee if they saw her smile. In one city, the priests carried her into a cathedral on golden litters, crowning her with iron thorns, declaring her the vessel of divine suffering. She stayed for 3 days, lighting their altars, blessing their sick. On the 4th, the coal inside her demanded more. The city did not stand after that. Through all of it, the boy and the girl remained. They grew older, but not like others. The fire slowed them. Their skin healed from cuts too quickly. Their eyes held a dim glow in the dark. They became her shadows, her silent witnesses. When she asked why they had not left, the boy only said, "If you carry the pain of fire, we will carry the pain of following it." But the coal's hunger deepened. It no longer whispered. It shouted. It demanded. When she walked through forests, the trees burst into flame without her touching them. When she wept, sparks fell with her tears. She dreamed of nothing but furnaces where she was both fuel and flame, where the world knelt her only as it burned. And still, she could not stop walking, because the fire told her where to go. It pulled her north, farther than any pilgrim had followed before. The boy and girl staggered beside her, frost thick in their hair, their breath ragged. On the horizon, black mountains split the sky, and smoke rose from their crowns. She knew this place. She had never seen it, yet she knew it was where the first flame had fallen, where her bloodline had begun, where fire itself waited for her return. The path grew harder. She passed villages that froze at her arrival, whose people begged her to leave before the snows melted around them. She passed kingdoms at war, who tried to seize her as a weapon. She passed fields of bones, where pilgrims who once followed her still lay, their faces upturned in worship of a flame that never saved them. At last, she reached the mountain. The boy collapsed at its base, too weak to climb. The girl sat beside him, her eyes bright with the fire that now lived within her. She looked at the pilgrim, and for the first time, she smiled. "This is what you were walking toward all along," she whispered. The Pilgrim of Pain touched the girl's face, feeling her warmth. "I was never walking toward it," she said. "I was walking into it." She climbed alone. The coal inside her pulsed with every step, brighter, hotter, until she thought her ribs would crack. At the peak, she found a crater. Black stone encircled a vast pit, and within it roared a flame that was not of wood or oil, but something endless. It licked the sky, its voice booming in every heartbeat. "You have carried me far," it said. "Now carry no more. Step into me. Become what you were meant to be." She looked down at her hands. Scars ran across her palms, though they had never truly been harmed. She thought of her village, of her mother's hopeful eyes, of her father's fear. She thought of every pilgrim who had touched her and called her holy. She thought of the boy and the girl who had chosen to burn beside her, and then she stepped forward. The fire took her gently, like a parent drawing a child into embrace. Her flesh vanished. Her bones glowed and dissolved. What remained was not a woman, but a figure of flame shaped like one, walking upright, smiling still. The mountain shook. The forest far below ignited. The river steamed away into the sky. At the foot of the mountain, the boy looked up with tears running hot on his face. The girl only watched, her small hand pressed her chest where her own coal now pulsed. The Pilgrim of Pain was gone, but the fire had only begun its journey. The boy and the girl did not leave the mountain. They built no shelter, planted no crops, dug no graves for the pilgrims whose bodies lay frozen in the valleys below. They sat at the base of the peak, where the Pilgrim of Pain had vanished, waiting. The boy grew thin, his ribs sharp beneath his skin. The girl, though small and frail, began to change. When she breathed, her breath came as smoke. When she laughed, sparks danced from her teeth. At night, she would climb partway up the mountain, staring into the glow at its crown. "She's not gone," she whispered. "She's walking still. We just can't see her." The boy would beg her to come back down, terrified that the mountain would swallow her as it had swallowed their saint. But she always returned, her eyes brighter, her smile more certain. Seasons turned. Snow melted, then fell again. Strangers began to find them. A wandering monk first, his robe scorched in places, his face red from long days walking in sun and ash. He asked if it was true that the pilgrim had become flame. The girl told him yes, and when he doubted her, she opened her hand. A small flame bloomed in her palm, steady, clean, burning without wood. The monk fell to his knees, whispering prayers in a tongue neither child knew. He built a shrine of black stones and left offerings of dried herbs and animal bones. Then came more, traders who had heard rumors, bandits who thought to capture a miracle, pilgrims carrying wounds, begging to be healed, soldiers carrying swords, demanding to be blessed. The boy tried to drive them away, but the girl only smiled, her fire dancing brighter each time she was seen. They came for her, she told him, and through me, they can still find her. The boy grew afraid, not of her, but of what was inside her. He remembered the villages burned when the pilgrim could not control herself. He remembered the faces twisted in devotion as they followed her to their deaths. He remembered her words before she climbed the mountain. I was never walking toward it. I was walking into it. One night, he woke to find the girl gone. He climbed in panic, scrambling over black stone until he reached the crater. She was there, standing at its edge, her arms spread wide. Her body flickered with fire, as though her skin were made of candlelight. She calls me, the girl said. Her voice was calm, her eyes bright. She says I must walk too. The boy begged her not to. He told her they had already lost one saint of flame, and he could not lose her too. But she shook her head, smiling. We are not lost. We are found. The fire is never gone. It only changes shape. And with that, she stepped into the pit. The boy screamed, reaching, but the heat drove him back. He saw her body dissolve into the same figure fire, walking into the heart of the inferno. And then silence. The mountain calmed. The flame roared softer, as though satisfied. The boy staggered back down, alone now. Alone, except for the pilgrims who had gathered at the base. They crowded around him, asking, pleading, demanding to know what had happened. He told them nothing. He only stared at the smoke rising into the sky, his heart hollow. But soon they began to tell their own stories. Some claimed they saw two figures of fire walking the mountain's rim at night. Others swore they heard voices in the crackle of burning wood. A few even said they were touched in dreams by hands of flame, healed of sickness, marked with scars that burned like brands. The boy became their unwilling priest. They asked him to speak her words, to guide them in her name. He resisted. He screamed that the fire had stolen everything. There was no God, only hunger. But they would not listen. To them, his anger was holy. His grief was scripture. Years passed, and what began as a gathering grew into a settlement, a village, then a city. Black stone houses rose, their hearths always lit. The people built great pyres in the squares, burning day and night. They carved her likeness into the cliffs. First the pilgrim, then the girl, both with the same serene, steady smile. They called themselves the children of ash. The boy, who had grown into a man, tried to leave them. He traveled far, to kingdoms that had never heard the pilgrim's name. But fire followed him. Houses caught flame when he slept. Candles burned brighter when he prayed for darkness. And wherever he went, people recognized something in his eyes, and they knelt. Always they knelt. He realized then that he had never been free. The Pilgrim of Pain had not only passed the flame to the girl, she had passed it to him, too. He carried it differently, hidden beneath his grief, but it was there, burning slowly, patiently. And one day it would claim him. The boy did not know when the dreams began. At first they were fleeting, shadows flickering against the inside of his eyelids, the scent of smoke where there should have been none. He would wake with ash on his tongue, his throat dry as though he had swallowed coals. But soon the dreams deepened. He began to see her. The Pilgrim of Pain did not appear as he remembered her. She no longer wore the ragged cloak that had trailed across the world, nor the calm smile she had worn even as cities burned behind her. In the dreams, she was flame, a figure of fire walking through endless dark, her face shifting like embers caught in wind. She never spoke, but her mouth moved, and though he could not hear words, he understood. She was telling him to walk. The man tried to ignore it. He had left the mountain, left the pilgrims who built shrines in her name, left the girl who had joined her in fire. He had wandered far, seeking peace in places untouched by her shadow. But the fire would not leave him. It flickered in the corners of rooms. It danced in pools of water. It glowed in the eyes of strangers. And the dreams grew louder, sharper, until one night he woke with burn marks on his hands, though he had touched no flame. He returned at last to the mountain. The city at its base had grown in his absence. Where once there had been a few black stone huts, now there were towering spires of soot-stained marble, their tops shaped like tongues of flame. Bells rang in tones like crackling wood. Pilgrims flooded the streets, their bodies scarred with ritual burns, their mouths chanting hymns to the Pilgrim of Pain. Children ran barefoot across the hot stones, their feet unblistered, their laughter sharp as sparks. The man walked among them unnoticed at first, another wanderer in ragged clothes. But some saw his face and froze. They remembered him, though decades had passed. His grief had become legend among them. They called him the Ash-Bearer. And when the priests saw him, they fell to their knees, pressing their foreheads against the ground. He fled to the edge of the city, his heart pounding. He wanted nothing to do with their worship. But that night, as he tried to sleep beneath the mountain stars, the dreams came stronger than ever. He saw not only the pilgrim, but the girl. They stood side by side in the flames, their faces serene, their bodies shifting between flesh and fire. This time they spoke, their voices with a roar of burning forests. "You have carried us in silence," they said. "Now you must speak." The man woke to find hundreds gathered around him. He did not know how they had known where he slept. He did not ask. They only waited, their faces lit by the glow of countless torches, their eyes wide with devotion. He tried to leave. His feet would not move. He tried to speak denial, but what came out was a low murmur, words he did not know. The crowd echoed them back, a single voice rising into the night. He covered his ears, but it did not matter. The fire was speaking through him, and the people heard. From that night on, he could not escape them. They built a temple around him, carving his likeness in stone beside hers. They brought him offerings of flesh and gold, laying them at his feet. They begged for his touch, his blessing, his flame. He refused at first, but the coal inside him, quiet all those years, began to stir. His hands grew hot, his breath smoked, and when he brushed his palm across the sick, they burned and then were healed. The crowd wept. They said he had taken her place. The man knew the truth. He had not replaced her. He had become her vessel. The dreams showed him more. Cities in the distance, waiting to be walked through. Thrones of kings and queens cracking beneath fire. Oceans boiling away, leaving only steam. He saw himself not as a man, but as a walking pyre, leading humanity into flame. And always, always, the pilgrim smiled behind his eyes, whispering the same command. Walk, burn, walk again. He fought it. He prayed for silence. He tore his skin with stones, hoping pain would drown the coal. But nothing stopped it. When he opened his mouth, fire leapt out. When he raised his hands, buildings shook. When he wept, the earth itself smoked. The children of Ash rejoiced. Their saint had returned. The man screamed inside his own body, for he knew what they did not. The fire would never be satisfied. It would burn the mountains, the cities, the seas, the sky itself. And when nothing remained but cinders, it would still demand more. And he, last of her pilgrims, last of her shadows, would be the one to carry it there. The man's body grew thin with years, yet he did not die. His hair turned white, his skin lined with age, but the coal inside him burned steady. He walked cities to ruin, not because he wished it, but because he could not help it. Each step left soot behind. Each word he spoke made the air shimmer with heat. People called it prophecy. He called it torment. He begged them to stop following him, but they always came. They walked barefoot through cinders, their skin blistering, their mouths chanting. They carried their children to him, thrusting them forward to touch his hands, to catch a spark. And sparks always caught. More and more children were born with eyes like embers, veins that glowed beneath the skin. The fire was multiplying. The man climbed mountains, sailed rivers, crossed deserts, always searching for a place he could not reach. But fire followed and fire devoured. He dreamed now not a pilgrim, but of a great furnace with no bottom. He saw faces inside it, hers, the girl's, his own, burning and smiling, burning and smiling. He woke to find his mouth smiling too. One night, he walked into a forest black with night. He begged the fire aloud to end him, to leave his body, to return to its mountain. But the forest answered. Trees cracked, sap hissed, flames licked the sky. The coal inside him pulsed with joy. You are not cursed, it told him. You are chosen. You are the road, and the road has no end. The man fell to his knees, sobbing. He pressed his hand into his own chest, clawing at the ember he had carried all his life. His fingers burned to bone, but he dug deeper, deeper, until he felt the coal. It pulsed like a second heart. He tried to tear it free. It would not move. The forest around him screamed with fire. People came, as they always did, drawn by the light. They saw him kneeling in the inferno, flames pouring from his wounds, his mouth open in a silent howl. And they did not see torment. They saw a miracle. They dropped to their knees, pressing their faces into the ash, crying out his name. The man tried one last time to scream the truth, but when he opened his mouth, only fire came out. The crowd roared in ecstasy. They called him the eternal pilgrim, the last saint of flame. And then the coal inside him burst. Light tore through the forest, brighter than day. The trees bent and fell, rivers boiled, mountains cracked. The sky itself glowed red, as though dawn had swallowed night forever. In the heart of it stood not a man, but a figure of fire, walking upright, smiling with the same serene, steady expression that the Pilgrim of Pain had worn centuries before. The people wept. They worshipped. They burned. And the fire walked on, not as curse, not as blessing, but as God. The pilgrim's journey was complete, and the world would never stop burning.